Yo, 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 what's up, all you burner stoners and potheads? This is Weedman 420 with the Weedman 420 Chronicles. How are all you vipers doing out there? Big Earl, how you doing, brother? Doing okay?
Yeah, I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm doing great, man. Hey, all you friggin' gardeners out there in the world, hopefully you're doing great. And we have a special guest on for the third time in our Burping the Bag. This is the Terp Fiend. How you doing, brother?
Doing well, Weedman. Thanks for having me back, buddy. Always a good
We
time.
love it. We'd love to have you on, man. Anybody who's a fan of Yoda is a fan of mine. And anyone who's got a badass picture of Dr. Gonzo, Hunter S. Thompson on the behind him, mwah. I love it. I love it. That is one dope drawing. Was that hand drawn, like with a pencil?
It was. It's a Canadian artist. Her name's Christelle Bilodeau. And I found her on Instagram. I was absolutely floored by the detail. If you see it up close, it's unbelievable. It's photorealistic. It's amazing. She does great work. And it was a piece I commissioned and had done a little while back.
Love it. One of a kind. Love it even better. So we're going to smoke. I'm super stoked because I need to get stoned right now. You guys already started without me, and I love it. So Big Earl, you'll go first then because I'm going to light mine up while you tell them what you're smoking, and then we'll talk to Terp.
Yeah, sorry, I jumped the gun there. I'm smoking that Nightmare OG. That's pretty much all I smoke when I got it. What about you? What'd you say you were smoking on?
I'm smoking on what you grew, a little Ursula berry.
Yeah, that weed. That was a weird. That weed. I never had a weed get me so like downed as that weed.
I like it.
Yeah, it was very.
I like it a lot. The taste, the color of it, the flavor, the high, it's everything that I love when I'm smoking a nice, mellow, nighttime, knock me out kind of strain. But you know what, though? It makes me think a lot. And that's what I kind of like when I did it on the show. The last episode I smoked it on, too. It made me think a lot and talk a little bit, though. So which was kind of nice. It didn't couch lock me. So which I kind of really enjoyed it. So, but dude, the flavor of it and the high is great. Terp, my brother, what are you smoking on this one?
Pineapple tart, which is an ice cream cake pineapple sorbet cross with a little bit of mixed dry sift from about 6 or 8 different strains. Greasy as all hell. But yeah, man, just the pineapple tart right now. It's kind of got a lemongrass kind of piney thing. I have another pheno of it that's more of like a grape menthol, which is kind of my favorite, but this is just the heaviest jar at the moment, so it's the one that gets grabbed.
Nice. What's the flavor? What's the smell and the flavor of that? Because I've never had pineapple tart before, but it sounds delicious.
Oh, it's kind of like, so I've got a couple different phenos that I work with. There's one that definitely favors the sorbet a lot more and is more of like a pineapple candy. This was probably the pheno that I'm least in love with, and I haven't done a ton of breeding with, but it's just around for puffing, and it grows big chunky buds, but it's more of like a citrus and pine kind of funk thing. And then the menthol grape one, as much as it's not pineapple or tart, the menthol grape one is the one everybody grabs 10 times out of 10. It's just unbelievable. It's got like a real like Dimetap grape with like almost like a menthol-y thing, and it's really tasty.
Man, that's crazy. Holy shit.
Excuse me?
Because I've seen them like menthol strains. Where that menthol flavor comes from? Is there like a strain specifically that you know of?
Nothing that rings a bell. And it's one of those that's kind of like, I don't know that I've ever had like just a menthol-y strain, but I've had some that like definitely has that like camphor, almost like what's the stuff the ravers used to put on their masks? What's the it's got like a Vicks vapor rub thing going on. Kind of showed.
I used to work at the bar industry, and you see the kids with the vapor rub nose ones and walk around just sniffing it the whole when I was buying.
Yeah. I've seen that before.
What the fuck are you sniffing? Oh, vapor rub. You want some? Like, I'm not fucking on Molly. Get the fuck out of here.
Drinking nothing but water.
Oh shit. So this was supposed to be a show that we were supposed to have 4 breeders on, and this is sometimes the way of life goes. We were supposed to have Magic Beans on also, and we were supposed to have Straight A Genetics, and Magic Beans got COVID, so we couldn't make it, unfortunately. Nick, we're praying for you, man. Get well soon. And then living out in the mountains, growing where he does, Straight A Genetics, internet went out. And that's what happens when you live hours away from a city in the middle of nowhere, growing some great bud and breeding some great bud and just living your life to the fullest on a big farm. And that's what happened. So we're going to reschedule this with them, and we're definitely going to have all of them on because we're super stoked about doing this, roundtable discussion with some of the greatest breeders on the planet. So I'm super stoked that we'll reschedule everybody. So I know we've been talking about this on some episodes prior to the lead up to this. So, but we have Terp on, who's been on the show 3 times. We love it. And I'm super happy you got your Insta back on. You're doing your podcast live again, because it means a lot to those people out there, especially your audience and people who've gotten to know you on the shows you've been on too, probably have joined and stuff. So I'm glad you got your Insta back, and we'll give plugs away later on. But I'm so happy to see you. Every time you're on and I see you, I go, fucking Terp, hell yeah, you're back, baby. I love it. So, and I'm glad things going on. You went to Disney. How was your Disney trip?
Disney's awesome, man. It's hard to go there and not have a good time. As long as you got the bread to handle it, like, it's a great time, man. It's one of those where you can, depending on what you want to spend, like, you can get in as deep as you possibly can. It's one of those few places where you could spend a car in a week.
Yeah, I mean, you can.
You could easily spend a car in a week and not see it, you know. But I'm lucky, man. The wife takes that stuff seriously, and she gets up and makes all her reservations and makes it fun for everybody, and it's a great time. So,
did you go to Land or World?
Right before surgery. What was that?
Did you go to Land or World?
World.
Disney World or Disneyland? World. Okay. So you're a nerd like me. How was the Star Wars thing? I haven't been there since. I haven't been to Disney World or Land in it was quite some time. So it's probably been about 20 years.
We did that in 2021, right? Because it was the first trip I had done. We did it for my 40th birthday, and we had to do the Star Wars. When I say it's the most unbelievable thing that I've ever seen, like, we've done Harry Potter as well, and it's equally as themed and well done, but Rise of the Resistance is the most incredible thing we waited 3.5 hours to get on Rise of the Resistance. And you would think there's no way you leave that ride and you go, man, I would do it again right now. And that was exactly how I felt. Like, I would have gone and got back in that line for 3.5 hours and done it again. It's
wow. The longest I ever waited on the line at Disney World was Space Mountain, and that was 2 hours, and I was actually tripping on acid, and it was fucking misery.
Wow, yeah.
until we got inside. Yeah. When you were waiting outside, it sucks. It was blazing hot. But when we got inside, when you got to see all the cool lights and then riding on a trip, it was fucking great. But waiting 2 hours online, especially tripping.
We only had one day in that park, and I woke up that morning and they said the ride was closed. Rise of the Resistance was closed, and that's why you go. There's only one other Star Wars ride, and it's fun, but it's not. I wouldn't have waited hours for that. And normally we get the pass so you can skip the line and all of that, but because it had been closed, we didn't get that option, and so we had to wait. And it was the only reason I went, and I waited, and I was like, I don't care if it takes us 4 hours, 5 hours. I'm here. This is my whole day. We almost didn't do anything else. But it was kind of cool because after that, it was dark, and we got to see the whole park at night with the Millennium Falcon. And yeah, it's the coolest thing you've ever seen. We did the make your own lightsaber, and yeah, we geeked out. It was fun.
Nice. Well, I like I said, last time we talked, when you were on the show last, you said you were going. So we hadn't had a chance to talk since about the trip. So I wanted to know how it went. So that's awesome, man. Super stoked. I'm glad you had a good trip and surgery went well. God bless on that. Awesome stuff to hear. So you ready to get the show started, Big Earl?
Yeah, I'm ready, man. I'm excited.
All right, man. You go first. Let's ask Terp what we know, what we show.
Yeah. So we talked last time, and you talked about how you didn't like making autos. I think you said you didn't like making fems either. So I want to know, have you ever been in a situation like, because I know you get asked about that constantly, probably, where you thought about making it just for the ease of somebody? Like, I got like a friend to be like, dude, just throw this in some pots out back. Something like that. Has there ever been times where you're like, man, okay, this is intriguing me. Have you ever been close to pulling the trigger?
No, no.
Ah.
And here's why. And here's why, man. And I hate to blow it. You
No,
know,
I love it.
it's a fundamental how I look at the industry, the business, the way that I look at my work. It really is a sense of it's not my passion, and there's somebody else out there who loves that work and who's done it for years and who's put in the time. And there's just a certain amount of like, I'm not going to fake it just to make a buck or make an extra buck. And that's how I see it. Like, simply because breeding fems is completely different than breeding photos. Breeding breeding regular sex seeds. Breeding autos is a completely different world than breeding photo period seeds. So there really is a little bit of like, if you're good at something, do what you're good at, stick in your lane, know what you're great at, and work on that as hard as you can. And it's just a matter of, I don't want to push into other people's lane. B, it would take me so much research to do it on the level that I want to do it on. Like, I just don't want to half-ass it. And so for me, if I were really going to get into fems, I need to learn a whole different language. Like, I need to learn a whole different way of breeding and of searching for genetics and what I need to look for in my selections. So it just comes down to, there's people doing that work. There's people that wake up every day and that love what they do and that do it and they're doing it every day and that are passionate and they're pushing the industry forward. I don't need to get on those people's toes. You know, I'm happy with my lane. I'm kind of old school in that I want to work with males and females, but I also want people to be able to take my seeds and go make their own seeds. And that's not really the case with autos and fems. The margin of error with auto seeds especially is really thin, especially if your expectation is that every plant is going to autoflower, which that's one of those industries where the expectation is really high, because if you don't have plants that autoflower, they're not what you're selling them as. And so that alone takes years of working lines of selection for that. And like, being a little old school, like, I always threw autoflower plants in the trash. That's just how I looked at that. So it would, like I said, it would be almost a fundamental change of how I handle every facet of what I do. And so I just go, I'm not going to fake it just for a buck. I'm not going to fake it just to be able to say, yeah, I got some fems on my list and I got some, what I would rather do is I would rather find those people out there that are making those and sell them on my website and also be able to offer them, Terpfi3rd.com for what it's worth, than to step on somebody else's toes and just do something that I don't love.
That's cool.
Yeah,
That's cool.
I never knew that about autoflowers, and you're right, because I have run now maybe like 6 or 7 rounds of it, and I failed a couple rounds too, because they're a little different than running regular seeds, especially when you're talking about root development and like maintaining those and like stressors and shit. And it's very weird when they don't, like, you're sitting there looking and you're like, this one's just normal. I never knew that was even a thing there. But what lights do you run? You run all LED?
Now,
Yeah, all LED.
yeah, and it's funny because I probably saw my first LED in person, like with my own 2 eyes, 99, 2000. And they were little, small, rinky-dink looking things. They were blue and purple lights. They were not it. They were not it. They were not for growing weed. You might have been able to put a little house plant underneath it, but they were not for growing weed. The last, I'll just chip off 6, 8, 10 years. That industry has changed so much in the being able to dial in the spectrum and really making something that's truly closer to, sunlight in its spectrum than anything else we've used before. Yeah, I mean, it's tough to see a downside other than your buy-in is a little more expensive depending on the size of your grow. If you're running a 80,000 square foot commercial grow, yeah, that's gonna be a lot of money. But then you just have to weigh it versus your power usage, and you go, I don't know, man. Power never ends. But power is one of those things that, like, that purchase never ends. You're always paying for power as long as you got lights on. But with lights, that purchase ends. So there's a certain amount of it's an investment now for a long term look at, we could save a ton of money. I mean, we really could save a ton of money. And if you're talking about a big commercial grow, indoor grow, yeah, money matters, and for a lot of those guys, it's tough to find the initial buy-in to switch over. But if you're running a tent, if you're running, anything in a tent, a small closet, a garage, yeah, you should be running LEDs at this point. Like, it's hard to justify HIDs in their power. The spectrum's not the same, just simply not the same. I've seen a lot of grows right now that density wise and in oil production match or better most of the large HID grows that I've seen. And so, it's not only do you have power, but you also don't have to suck as much air and air exchange to now keep the temps and keep the humidity and keep everything in line. It's almost as though your lights are almost a neutral issue, depending on how big your grow is and how big your lights are. But yeah, not like before where you had to have big inline fans to pull 4 or 5 lights just to pull all the heat off the light so you're not just cooking your room. And, I mean, anything bigger than 4 lights and you were seriously investing in HVAC. And it's just, at the end of the day, the technology's advanced so much in the last decade, 6, 8 years, that it's silly to still be using HID lights. I hate to say that. And I was 18 years, I ran nothing but big ballast, all the way back to when it was just stadium lighting or, lighting off the top of a street light.
I got a couple of those in my life.
Yeah, I mean, bro, let's be honest. If you've never done anything dodgy with a light, you really hadn't been in it that long, because there was some dodgy shit we had to do with lights at one point where that was all you knew to do. You did whatever you could to get a light over it. And let's be honest, if you got something smokable, you did good.
If you knew a couple of Flora Power lighting guys that can get you those lights, you're fucking in like Flint.
What's funny is you can't give those away in Colorado. You can't give them away because there's so many sold, and every time a grow goes out of business, they just wholesale them to the street for dollars, and when you just can't give them away. Like, there's so many there. People have storage units full of HID lighting now that's becoming obsolete real quick.
Yeah.
Real quick. Yeah.
All grow equipment. There's so many people recently that have stopped growing weed that everybody who's doing it, that's like in it to win it. I'm not taking a fan from somebody's for free. I'm not taking a fan or a light because it's like, bro, I don't know what bugs, what mildews. Like, I'd rather just take the hit.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not, so here you literally can't even give it away. You have to just throw it away.
Yep. Yeah. And that's one of those things, man, that like anybody can grow weed for 6 months. Anybody can do 2 rounds of weed and give up, but like people that are in it for the long term, there's a certain amount of, you see these trends change. If you've done it long enough, you've seen a couple cycles of fads of, I remember every time I would walk into the grow shop for a decade, they would have one of those light turners that looked like a ceiling fan. It was just blades with lights on them.
Yeah.
And I swear, I don't know who bought them, but somebody had to have bought them because they were in every grow shop I went to in any part of the country for the better part of the early 2000s into the mid 2000s. And yeah, I never saw one in a grow, but that always told me that there's probably a reason. That's probably a waste of money. Somebody's probably yelling right now that's got one in their grow, in their niche grow. That's like the one person that bought them that loves it and it's been crushing for them for 20 years. But like, it's one of those that it's like hydroponics. Like there's certain things that work in big grows that are that work in your closet grow or in your garage grow that aren't going to work to scale. And so the bigger you grow, the more you really have to manage like your resources, what you've put in, when things go wrong, how easy is it to fix? But yeah, man, I
Yeah.
think we covered that.
With HPS2, one thing that I was surprised at when I got LED was that not only was it cheaper to run everything, but my room wanted to be warmer. So
Yeah.
that was cheaper in general. Like my AC didn't even need to keep it. I think it's like 6 or 7 degrees warmer than when I ran HPS because I don't have to deal with those hot spots.
Yeah, it's more even. The only downside that I would say, as far as, and this is changing drastically, is just light penetration through your canopy. So being able to get light, especially if we're talking about a warehouse, right?
Yeah.
We're talking about big grows. Um, it's tough to get that light all the way down to the table, or at least down, to the bottom, to the lowers. But it just takes more management at that point, more pruning, more keeping your plants, more keeping everything at a consistent height, making sure you've only got one strain per area type of thing. But yeah,
that's for real. It's so hard to have. I rarely run more than one of the same plants in my room, but I trellis everything pretty similarly, like on trays. And so my stuff is so crazy with my lights hanging wild. We've talked about that before. It's like this one's 2 foot lower than this one, but what what nutrients do you like? What do you run?
so for 18 years, I pretty much ran what I could get organic, get my hands on, and that was it. And after about, I'd be honest, after probably a decade, I kind of started to look at like, here's the problem, right? If we're only running one strain, it's pretty easy to tailor a nutrient regimen that's going to work 100% of the time. You dial it in, you run that more, you learn what doesn't work, you learn what works. The problem is if you're running a ton of different strains, tailoring that to and making sure everything gets enough, but not too much. How much time do you want to spend mixing dirt? Like that's really what it comes down to. How much of your time, and let's be honest, soil is a young man's game. It really is. It's a young man's game because it's back, it's legs, it's shoulders, it's work, it's work, it's farming. So it's like, how much time do you have to turn soil? How much time do you have to mix and dial soil? Because if that's all you want to do for the next decade, grow the best weed you can. But there's a certain amount of, if you want to have a life, that's not how it works. Like we were talking a little bit earlier about, like, if you want to be able to step away, have somebody else deal with your problem when you're not there, you put together a regimen that's easy to handle, that's easy to fix when things don't go 100%. So I'm a big fan of cocoa. We were kind of chatting. Cocoa's to me it's foolproof in the sense that all you need to do is measure your output and you can tell real quick what needs to be fixed.
Yeah. I would say it's the best of soil and the best of like a true hydro. It's like got all the benefits of like being able to instantly adjust your nutrients, your pH, stuff like that. But then also it can stay moist for 3 days and you don't have to worry
Right.
about it drying overnight because of pump clogs.
I love when when Big Earl uses the word moist. I love it. It makes me feel funny inside.
It's funny because it's not a simple answer if you want to cover the question, right? So it seems like a simple question, like what newts do you use? But it's like it's such a multifaceted question that it really comes down to like, how are you growing weed and what works best for this situation? So like for a long time I loved soil, I loved the oil production, but I'm going to be honest with you, I never had a single round that I said I think I got 150% out of that. I got everything I could have. Everything went as well as it could have from front to back. Like I always felt like I don't know exactly what my plants are getting. And so eventually I moved to a setup where that's all measurable. And, you know, I'm not, I don't want to get into a long discussion about what grows better weed, but I've always been a fan of organics and did it the organic way and did it for years and years and years. And I never really felt like it grew dank weed. Oil production, probably the best of any way you can grow weed, but not as far as flower production, huge calyxes, density. Like it takes 20 years or more to dial in a soil recipe that'll work for every single strain that you want to run and get an even feed for every one of them. And that's tough, man. Like it's, you know, and so I've been a big fan of when I grew organics, if I wasn't just mixing in, you know, various amendments and things like that, like a super soil. I've had a lot of success with like Botanicare's lines. I've seen people grow. I saw a little old lady in Colorado that was absolutely crushing a basement, and it was somebody was doing it for her type of thing. But man, they grew some really awesome weed, and it was one of those that was all Botanicare. It was easy. It was cocoa, you know. It was organics in cocoa, so it's cocoa. You know, it's still hydroponics to a sense, but it's not. You know, I like personally, I put together a regimen at a certain point that was equal parts organics, equal parts synthetics. So I use canna as a base. I use organic supplements. I use a ton of bacterials, and it's you know it's to me it's always been the best of both worlds. But if I have to hand it to somebody else and just say I gotta go, I gotta whatever's going on, if something goes wrong, it's almost all measurables. It's almost all things that are very easy to say, oh, okay, here's what I need to fix. And it's a little different too, if you're running entirely for seed than if you're running for, flower production, oil production, you're trying to run cup runs. It's all depends on your situation and like what works best for your time limit for your back. How long's your back good for? The answer to that, just so everybody knows, is not forever. That's the thing that nobody tells you, is the toll on your body being a grower. And just when you're young and you want to, dude, I just want to sling bags of dirt and I want to grow the dankest weed I can. And that's awesome. We need those people out there. We need those people out there, and it's changed a lot too, because there's a lot of advances in organics now that weren't around the late 90s, early 2000s. Nobody knew what Korean no-till was. Like even on forums that wasn't heavily discussed. Like it's just not something that was, that's something in the last 20 some years that's really popped up heavy, and has started to become a thing more and more of people, making their own ferments and making their own and absolutely tailoring all of that and making that. And
yeah,
that sounds exhausting.
yeah.
I'm just going to be honest with you, man. I'm not going to tell you it's not going to grow dank weed, but I'm going to tell you two things. It's exhausting and it doesn't really work at scale. It's really tough to have vats of rotted stuff in a commercial weed garden. It's really tough, especially to water thousands of plants. Like I've had discussions with people that do organics to scale, and they will tell you there's a limit. Like there's a size limit to how well that you can grow all organically. No pesticides, no fungicides, no, like it's tough. And at scale, like I said before, we've kind of talked about it before, when you have people coming in and out of your grow that go home to their own grow and work in their own grows, bring their own problems in, it's it's really easy to get something and really tough to get rid of it in a grow that size, you know?
That's
Oh
right.
yeah. What you brought up earlier, growing the best weed out of the organic, but hitting that scale. So what is the best cut that you've ever gotten from somebody?
Best cut, man. So have this weird relationship with weed that like I never got attached to any one lady. There's a couple that got away that if you ask me like if I could have anyone that you know slipped out of my hands or there's a purple kush cut I got mites twice for. I got him from the same kid and I got him twice. And I
Yeah,
knew I was going to get him the second time. And I was just like, I want this cut. I want it no matter what. I need it. I have to have
figure
it.
it out.
And so, you know, as far as strains that I've worked with in my breeding, the pineapple sorbet changed everything in the way that I looked at weed flavors and really changed how I perceived complexity in the strains that I worked with. So like that's one that it would be tough for me to say I'm never going to work with again. Um, but I've never been a big like cut hoarder. Like I've never been one of those people that like covets clone onlys or things that nobody has or that one cut of sour diesel from 2015. Like I just don't that's just not really something that I've ever been big on. But like as far as strains that I work with that I don't know that I could not work with again, you know, the deep chunk is another one that I found in the early 2000s that I've worked with in both pure form and in hybrids for years. Um, and it's one that like it would be tough for me. I kind of made a promise to myself when I found that strain, you know, in the early 2000s that I would do whatever I could to always have it and work with it and distribute it, and because it wasn't something that was available heavily the last 20 years. Like there was a drop of those maybe once or twice or three times, and then they've never really seen, you know, unless you know Tom Hill and you know the breeder personally, there's not a ton of those seeds out there. And especially now, you know, because they haven't, as far as I know, maybe speaking out of line here, but unless they've released somewhere and I didn't know about it, the last release I remember seeing somewhere on the internet was probably more than a decade ago. And so it's always one of those strains that, to my understanding, nobody ever had a problem with working with, you know, with people working with it. And so I always said I would offer it in some form because it was a strain that changed my outlook on strains. It's a strain that changed my outlook on Kush. It was a strain that changed my outlook on terpenes and medicinal value in particular strains, and something that I've seen make amazing hybrids with. But, you know, there's better stuff, but as a cross or as a, you know, a really well done pheno, it's to me one of the more medicinal, heavy myrcene, you know, really heavy chocolate, coffee, almost berry, depending pheno. Once again, like it's another one that if you get the older seeds, so I have the F14 is the last one that I've released, and I did an inbred line off the seeds that everybody else kind of worked with and started with. If you go back to those seeds, there was still a decent amount of variation in the line. And so it was one of those where you could find different phenos in different directions and kind of still had a little bit of variation. But as I've worked with it, we've kind of made it, it looks almost identical. It breeds almost identical. Heavy coffee, heavy chocolate. But it's a strain that for me, it would be hard not to work with at some point.
Yeah. Do you still have those around, or are those all gone? You said you had that a
Yeah,
long
the
time.
F14s. I still have the F14s available. It was just one of those things when people ask me all the time, like, why did we take it so far? It was, I never thought about it like that. The problems with it when I started working with it were there was still a little bit of herm in the line. It's not a plant that loves to grow under artificial light. So when I started working with it, it's a very old world strain. It's a strain that it's just not bred for indoor cultivation. Like that was never, you know, it's a continued inbred line of a particular hash plant, and it's just one of those that most of them, if you looked at them, They look really frosty. They're not the sort of strains that do well in extractions, generally speaking. It tends to have a lot of smaller trichomes, but they're everywhere, so it looks really frosty. Just has really small heads. Um, but to be honest with you, man, it's made some of the most amazing hybrids I've ever seen in my life. It's pure breeding power in crossing the heavy sativas and then being able to like tame that into something that can be grown is amazing. Um, but in my work with it, I've tried to pick phenos that work better under the lights. Most of what I've done with it has been indoors, and I've generally tried to select for phenos that are a little bit on the better production side, whereas some of the older world phenos kind of have like a small golf ball, like they don't yield well, they don't produce well, and so I don't really want to work with it any further. I don't see the point. I made so many F14s that I just don't see the point in continuously inbreeding it even further when at this point they all look the same, they all breed the same, they generally all smoke the same. Like there's not much more you can ask for in an inbred line.
Interesting.
Yeah. So what about seeds then? The cut. Who's the breeder and what's the lineage or cross on your favorite pack of seeds you ever hunted?
This ought to be good. This ought to be a good one.
Probably the aficionado, and I gotta give tons of props, man. Like in the world of expensive seeds, very few of them are worth the money. Like you see a lot of breeders these days that are quick to throw $300 on a pack of seeds, and a lot of people who aren't in the baseball card seed collecting game would look at that and go, what would you. And the reality is somebody with a warehouse grow and a budget, unlimited budget, is going to buy that up, not even think twice about it, and they're going to pay for it. But for smaller growers or for people who just collect seeds, those kind of prices can be tough to justify. And I'm going to be honest, it was the weirdest thing. I had somebody hit me up and they said, listen, I bought all these expensive seeds. He sent me a picture and it had to have been 15 packs. And it was some of the top breeders in the business, some of the best strains. And he's just like, I'm scared to pop them. Like, I'm scared. I have so much invested that like, I'm scared to pop them because I'm afraid I'm just going to fuck it up and I'm not going to be able to get my money out of it. I'm not going to be able to I'm just going to lose. And so he ended up trading me a bunch of packs for a bunch of my gear. And I worked with him. Like, why wouldn't I? Like some of the best genetics that I could think of,
Yeah.
And so from those became the pineapple sorbet, the white cherry truffle, like some of their better lines. And
Nice.
I've heard people have some complaints with some of them, and I think when you go into a $500 pack of seeds or a $700 pack of seeds, there's a pretty high bar as far as expectations go. And that can be tough when you're talking about anybody's grow. So like if you take a seed and you pop it in the perfect grow that's dialed in and everything works and there's no problems, then you should get 100% of your plants. That grow doesn't exist. I've never been in a grow in my entire life that didn't have a problem, didn't have a hiccup, didn't have it. So it becomes, survival of the fittest. And when you only have 10 seeds, your whole budget was $500 to buy this pack of seeds. You only have 10 seeds. It's really easy to see why something can go wrong, from germination to flowering. There's a million different places where something can step out of line. And it's easy to see why at that price point, at that expectation level, any small thing, and you just go, man, I don't know, man, I paid. Like we paid for, and but I have to say, of all the high dollar seeds that I've run, and those have been some of the best. Dying Breed has been some of the best. And I have absolutely no affiliation with any of those dudes. These are just seeds that I've worked with and popped and popped and popped and popped. And as far as flavors, as far as unique, as far as old world, like solid genetics, yeah, man, those are probably the two that for me I've had the most luck with.
Nice. That's awesome. I don't have any work with any of those.
They're expensive. They're expensive, bro. I mean, like most people are. Like I said, most people aren't spending $500 on a pack of seeds.
Yeah.
Nope.
You know, like
Not
a
me.
lot of the ones that I ran, I paid for. That just was one instance where like I had just a bundle of seeds fall into my lap, and I just went, "What do you do? Like what? You know, I'm not going to say no. Like these are all solid genetics, and you know, as far as I know, I've spoken to dude from from aficionado. We showed him the pineapple sorbet, and he's been super stoked with the work we've done with it, and it's an amazing line. I don't know that he was as confident in it as we've been. Like, when I talked to him and showed it to him, he was like, "Wait, that's mine," and I was like, "Yeah, absolutely, man. Like, I've seen nothing but win from those seeds, and like really, really amazing genetics, man." And I'll be honest, man. I've been blessed to work with them. Those pineapple sorbet crosses, which I just released a new line of very, very recently, is some of the most unique flavor that I've ever experienced. 20 years of popping
Sweet.
seeds.
That's awesome. So I'm big into mentorship, coaching, and guiding, and I've been mentored by tons of people, and I've mentored tons of people. I believe in it. Who's somebody that like coached and mentored you in the beginning, or even still to this day?
So this is a weird one, man, because I came up on the other side of weed, like in the before we had dispensary days, I suppose is a nice way to put it.
Traditional market
And
days.
so when I came up, man, we didn't talk to people. I didn't know people. I knew other people that were involved, but like we did as much as we could to stay away from each other. Just because there's no connection, there's no connection. Nobody has a problem. And so I did have a friend, and it's one of those where I'm not sure he'd entirely love me putting his name on the internet. Just a really private, chill dude who was one of the first people that ever handed me a cut. And back then, you really only had a couple options for seeds, right? You made them yourself. You bought them from Mark Emery through the back of the magazine, or you went to like Amsterdam or Canada and you bought them in person. And so, I had genetics that had come by and things that I had run and traded for and, little things like that. But then he handed me a cut. It was a skunk #1 cut. It became a
Ooh.
contentious thing, and it became like one of those things that by the time I was rid of it, I was happy to kind of see it go. But at the time, it was one of the frosty. It reminded me of Sensi Star. Like the first couple of times we saw Sensi Star, and you're just like, "That's a lot of resin." It just almost looked like nothing but resin. It was very much that, but it didn't have like the sky. It reminds me more of like there's another old school kind of Georgia cut that they used to call Kush with a C. But I don't think it's the same. That name is also gone with Green Crack, which is also a skunk #1 cut or cross of some sort. But it's kind of that more sweet, not like skunky skunk. But it was resin. It was resin back at a time where like, we didn't have tons of super resinous strains around like that. And this is in the first few years of me growing at all. And I had
Right.
a friend hand me this cut, and it was a confidence move because on a level it was like, I've seen a little bit of what you've done, and it's time. Like, but like I said, it was one of those weird things, and it goes back to why I don't really work with a ton of cuts. I don't like the whole, where did your cut come from? Is it that cut? Is it the cut? Is it the specific cut? The only legitimate cut? And you just go, man, I don't want to deal with all that shit. I'll just pop a seed. Like, I'll just wait and find somebody else that makes a cross with it and pop a seed. Like, I don't want to have to, every time I release a strain, somebody go, well, where did that cut come from? Is that their cut? Or did you get that from somebody else? Like, I don't care.
Yeah.
I don't care. I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to argue about it. Like, I don't want to have to validate everything that I do and run it by somebody and say, this is the specific cut that nobody else. I don't care. I don't
Right.
care. Once again, I'm in the seed game and I make regular seeds. So I want people to go out and breed with things and make their own stuff. And that's kind of goes the opposite of there's one cut and only one person has it and nobody else can work with it, you know.
Yeah.
I feel you. I got you. So you've been doing this for a while now. Anybody that you are coaching or mentoring that you see up and coming in the game, like people like the new young breeders, you coach and mentoring anybody, and if you want to throw their name out there, it's great. Like somebody you've seen that's really like taken off, that's going to start, or in the next couple of years going to be like, holy shit, this is the new wave, the new gen.
So the answer to that for me is a little different than just being able to say XY breeder. And here's why. The ethos that I've always tried to put out into the world is that everything we're making, all of these seeds, should be shared amongst everybody. Everybody should have access to them. Everybody should be able to take your seeds and go make their own seeds. They should be able to take two of their favorite strains and make seeds with them. And the thing that we've seen is that breeders that have that ethos tend to do better in drama and stress. And once again, it kind of goes back to like, I don't necessarily have to worry about, is this the specific validated by that person? Is this the only one that's out there? If you're open with people using your genetics to make their own seeds, other breeders to make seeds with your genetics, then you're not as stuck in that old school dogma of this is mine, I have to protect it, I have to do whatever I can to make sure nobody else can take it or use it. And those are the kind of breeders that, and a couple of them that were supposed to be on the pod with us tonight. There's a handful that I've had on shows of mine. Red Scare's a great example. Breeders who are out there making seeds that are passionate for the seeds and are doing it literally for the flavor, for the terps, for the people that consume them, and that are doing so without a chip on their shoulder about what happens with these, who uses them. You don't have to throw away half of your males because somebody's going to get mad that you made seeds with them. That's another big contentious thing in the weed business, is people getting super angry that what they put out shouldn't be used by anybody else for anything. There's a belief that you should take all the males in your pack and you should throw them directly in the trash can and you're not allowed to do anything with them. And the reality is, if you pay somebody your hard-earned money for seeds, you should be able to do whatever you want with them that you choose. Males, females, if you want to make crosses, if you want to blow out a whole warehouse of cuts, you paid for them. And so those are the kind of breeders that I support. The kind of people we're going to have on the round table. These are generally people that are pretty easygoing with it and that support that kind of ethos of open source genetics, of anybody using their seeds as they choose, and kind of, it's more of an ethos than this particular breeder or that particular breeder. It's more of, ask the person you're buying seeds from, can I take these and make my own seeds? And if their first instinct is no, or for whatever reason you shouldn't be doing that, spend your money somewhere else.
There you go.
That's flattering, in my opinion. Somebody's going to trust you enough to run your seeds when there's 50,000 people making seeds right now.
Yeah.
Give you money for them. It's like, dude, you can please make a ton of seeds and show people how badass they are for me.
Yeah, and it's not great for my business. Like when I say, I want you to go and take your favorite male and your favorite female that you got from my genetics and make your own seeds, that once again, it kind of goes against a lot of, what do you believe? Like, why are you in this and what matters to you? At the end of the day, if you go at everything with the attitude of none of this belongs to any of us. Everybody started with somebody else's genetics. Everybody had a leg up. Everybody had somebody's genetics that they started with, every seed maker. And that's just the nature of the business. And it's like there's a lot of ego involved with this is mine. I paid money for this cut. I paid somebody $30,000 so I had exclusive access to this cut. And that gets to be a real bitter thing within the industry of, especially amongst breeders. It gets to be real chippy.
That is great mentorship and coaching by Terpfi right there, ladies and gentlemen, and all you breeders and growers and gardeners out there. Thank you for that. I
That
enjoyed
was $1
listening.
million worth of free game.
That's why I'm thanking you for it. That information does not come cheap. All you gardeners out there, that's many years of learning and growing and reading and probably working and failing and working and failing and never giving up.
Failing mistakes, man. Nobody that's
Yeah.
been in this business for any reasonable amount of time, nobody's been around plants for any reasonable amount of time, hasn't made a mistake, hasn't looked at their garden at one point in time and go, what did I do? But the hope is the next one was the best one you could have done. The next one you learned from all those mistakes. You picked up that, little bit of whatever you made a mistake on, whatever thing didn't go right, and you make it better. And that's dialing it in. That's the whole life of a grower, is really finding those little places where you can tweak it a little bit and always having that mindset of the next one's going to be better because I learned something and I know something now that I didn't know the last time. And when I go into this, I'm not going to make that mistake. I'm not going to step in that puddle because I know it's there. And it's the great growers in this industry, whether you're a great closet grower or whether you're growing an 80,000 square foot grow, the great growers are the ones that learn from their mistakes, but are always learning.
There you go. Love it. So our friend Nick, Magic Beans, who's got COVID, was supposed to be on the show. And since he's been on the show, he's been hunting skunk. He wants to recreate it again because it's all he talks about. Skunk, 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 skunk. So I'm going to ask you, we don't need to go. We're going to have you back on the show again another time, talk about the skunk lineage.
Yeah.
I just want to know if you have it or if you know anybody that has a cut for him or some seeds or anything to help this man out.
I got something.
That's what I want to know.
Yeah, the short answer is I got something for you. Yeah, I can always put you on with a flavor. They don't call me Terpfi for nothing. Like if you need a flavor, I'll put you on with the flavor and we'll talk. But at the end of the day, there is a bigger discussion there that I want to have and that I want to have with a couple other growers. We've had a few times. The short answer is a lot of those plants, those old world skunks, the reason they're not here today, those exact plants, is because they were bitch to grow. They either hermed like a motherfucker. A lot of those plants were grown in big outdoor situations that weren't super regulated. A lot of the old world skunk that maybe people my parents' age might have known and a little bit, into my generation, a lot of that, there's a reason it's not around. It didn't adapt to indoor growing. It hermed like a motherfucker. It was just a problem. It was just a problem to grow. It's tall, lanky sativa. It's just not commercial indoor. Let's be honest. Through the late 90s into early 2000s until the legalization push of, the 2013, 2014, 2015, we started to have legal states and large commercial grows. The only things that were grown in this country outside of a small hobby situation were producers because people had to make money. And that's what the industry's always been about is people got to make money. Like Blue Dream to this day is still banging somebody's grow out right now.
Yep.
It's a producer. And so there's a lot of now there's so many more people growing weed that we're seeing so much more of the gene pool that there's still skunky plants out there. There really is. But the second half of the discussion with skunk that nobody really talks about a lot is humidity and how certain humidity and aridity in the environment can absolutely control terpene production, can control flavors. The same weed in two different environments, the same finished product in a dry environment versus a humid environment is going to express differently terpene wise. So what, or flavor wise, and so what we see is that it has a little bit more to do with humidity levels. Like I've seen a little bit more humid grows / drying conditions being more conducive to skunky terp phenos, like plants that maybe didn't express a ton of skunk in other environments, in a little bit more humid environments tends to produce a lot more of that skunky profile. Whereas maybe if you lived in somewhere that's a drier climate, maybe it doesn't express as much. But it's a twofold thing. There's definitely less skunk in the industry now than there was in the mid '70s, '80s, maybe in the '90s. But there's still skunky weed out there. It's just more complex too. The other thing is a lot of those older strains was easy to describe them in one term. It was skunky.
Right.
It was piney. It was citrus. And now we're in the world of the multi-hybrid, the polyhybrid, and there's so many different flavors, there's so many different things going on that I don't really keep strains anymore that I can describe with one word. Skunky's kind of boring to me. Like we grew up with a ton of skunk. So like now it's kind of like I've seen that. What else is there? And like I'm even more impressed with like, some of the chem line that's skunk plus. We keep joking about the poopine fetish, which is now the people that just want to describe their weed in the most funky, nasty descriptors they can, and it's becoming a fetish once you start talking about it and you start to see in the chat and everybody's like, yeah, I like that spoiled food. Who's got them feet terps? And I'm like, you see, it's becoming a real thing, and people want those heavy poop, heavy, heavy skunk, heavy nasty smells. But it's not, it's almost, we're at a point where like one note strains aren't going to last long because there's so much more complex stuff out there and there's so much more complex stuff coming out. But yeah, if you want some skunky weed, hit me, anytime. Seeds, I got you.
All right, we'll tell Magic to get a hold of
Yeah,
you.
and
So,
if it's, once again, if it's a breeder or somebody like that, man, I got you.
yeah, we'll get you all in the chat again. So let me ask you a question. During trimming time, we know it's a long process, a lot of work. I talk to Big Earl all the time about it. Man, I spend 10 hours trimming. I'm like, oof. So I know what he likes. What kind of music do you listen to?
Man, that's tough. Okay. And here's why, right? Like I left the home at like 16 to do fish tour. By the time I was probably 21, I had probably seen 50 shows. I've listened to everything, almost everything under the sun. The short answer is not electronic, 80% not electronic. But that's about it. I'm not a big country music fan, not a big opera fan, but everything else under the sun, jam related, hip hop. These days probably more hip hop than jam related stuff. But I try to see Widespread Panic 2 or 3 times a year. That's one of my last guilty pleasures as an adult. So usually hip hop is the short answer. What I'm going to see live is usually not that. Though I try to see as many hip hop shows as I can too. It's just if you're not into 20-year-olds who make hip hop, which I'm kind of old school, and most of the artists that I was really into are kind of a little older at this point. It's a realization I'm having slowly but surely, slowly but surely. As most of my idols fade off. But yeah, man. I mean, I saw Nas at Red Rocks. Primus. I see Primus 2 or 3 times a year if I can. Yeah, and I would say that's probably what I'm listening to if I'm listening to something. These days, man, I tend to get real into like if I'm trimming, and because I've just gotten to a point where it's just I could do it with my eyes closed and fairly efficiently. I'm a sucker for a good documentary. Like I'll throw on a Netflix doc or something I just haven't seen that I don't have to like watch real heavily. Not like murder docs and stuff like that, but more
Right.
into like anything that's weird, odd, anything documentary I can usually get into.
There you go.
But like I said, I can trim them. I can trim with my eyes closed at this point. A couple pounds in a day, no problem. So I don't have that thing with other people. It's really a tedious, like I have to pay attention and it's really hard and it's really stressful and I need to get through it. Some people really toil about about the trim room. And yeah, I've done it for a living at periods of my life where I just, we would show up to grows or wherever it was and just trim for money. And when you're fast, you can make decent money trimming. And yeah, man, it's just one of those things that like I'm easy, you
There you
know.
go.
I'm not gonna complain about anything, but if my headphones, it's usually hip hop.
All right. I like it. I'm into it. What give one tip of the trade, like somebody just starting out, somebody like myself, or like only been doing it for like 3 years legally in the legal market. Uh give somebody maybe just listening, or somebody that's been listening to you for a while, somebody that's been following you for a long time, give them a tip, trick, like something that's going to help them out real quick.
Yeah, absolutely, man. The best thing I could tell anybody is to not overthink it, and that you're going to learn more from having dirty hands than you are from all the forums on the internet. So learning from your mistakes, getting in and doing it, like at a certain point going, okay, I learned a lot. I have to try it now. The more you grow, the more you're going to find out because you're going to make those mistakes. You're going to find those little things that didn't work. You're going to dial it in. That process is what makes you a great grower. And it's like, I spent years on forums. It's nothing. Forums generally are experts telling experts how to be experts. They're usually not great for guys who just want to get started and figure it out, And like there is a lot of information when you're getting into growing and when you're getting into your first grow. The reality is, go to the grow shop, ask those guys for a simple setup, tell them kind of vaguely what you want to grow, organics, synthetics, have an idea of what to start with. But at that point, get in, get dirty hands, grow some weed, kill some plants. I mean, that's the thing nobody ever wants to talk about. You're going to kill some plants. You're going to kill some plants. We've all killed a couple of plants. It just happens, you know? But like, that's going to teach you more about what works and what doesn't. And as long as you go at each one of your grows with that mindset of there's no failure, everything's a learning experience. Try to listen to your plants. Try to be open to what they're telling you as far as what's going right and what's going wrong. The more you see that, the more you're going to know when something's not right.
There you go. Love it. Love it. Big Earl, got anything else to ask our friend Terp here?
No, man, I loved it. I had a lot of fun being able to jump around on some topics.
Yeah, man. Thanks for joining the Burping in the Bag. Go ahead and tell everybody where they can find you at.
Terpfiend.com, www.terpfi3nd.com. We keep getting shut down by Instagram, but I got an Instagram up at the moment. It's at TERPFI3ND. And if nothing else, really all that's good for is getting my link tree where you can find all of our podcasts and all of our various content, as well as sign up for the mailing list on the website. That's the best way to stay in touch with what we're going, what we're doing. We just dropped another pineapple sorbet line, just pre-orders now. They're shipping before 420. We're going to do a big 420 thing as well. But yeah, man, Terpfiend.com. It's the one place Instagram can't control. And the only reason I have an Instagram is just to direct people to other pages at this point. But yeah, my Reddit page now is where I'm moving all my flower pics. So if you want r/terp_fiend_genetics. And then the Discord is another big one that's become a little community of its own. The Terp Fiend
Discord's great.
Yeah.
Discord's awesome. I love Discord.
I had a buddy hit me up and was just like, hey, this is my thing. I want to handle it. Do you mind? And I was like, no, absolutely. And I've been real hands off with it. It's its own little community. I'm not, overlording it. And, I want people to have a place where if they're happy, they can say they're happy. And if they're not happy, they can say they're not happy. And it's really not something I have anything to do with. It's a friend that deals with it and handles it. And it's a great little community of growers and people just showing techniques and trading and, doing what they can do and enjoying it.
Yeah. it's so awesome because you don't get booted off. You can start a community. You can audio, video, do both. You know, the only thing I wish they would do, I wish you could start recording on it because it'd be fucking awesome to be able to record on it and then you'd be set. That's the only thing they're missing. But it's just a great. Big Earl, his Discord, I go on, you know, and what you've done, what a lot of you breeders who've started your own Discords have done. I mean, just people ain't asking questions, talking to one another. The community's great. Pictures, your like tip, like Big Earl's got one tips on there to help you out with the grow and putting like bits of parts of the show we do and stuff like that. I could spend an hour talking about Discord, but I won't. So, but I do like it. So join Terp's Discord though, and Big Earl's Discord too. Check them out too because it's a lot of fun. We do some stuff on there, have a lot of fun, and I do enjoy it. So, but Terp, man, we appreciate you having you back on, brother. Burping in the bag too.
Much, always a pleasure.
Yeah, we'll get that roundtable discussion lined up. It's real hard in life, you know, peeps out there. It's fucked up. Sometimes life happens. COVID, internet goes out, all this stuff. It happens. But you know what? Terp always shows up, and I appreciate you showing up, brother.
Anytime, really dog. Anytime.
I really do. Got anything else to say, Big Earl?
Yeah, I mean, we didn't get to it much, but we could talk about CalMag a little bit and how you could just you can fix anything with CalMag these days, guys. So don't forget, just add that double time, triple time.
Hey, everybody out there in the world, thank you. Thank you for listening. Oh, you use CalMag too?
CalMag's a lifestyle. It's a way of life.
CalMag life, baby.
Yeah, it's CalMag life.
Hashtag CalMag life. Hey, everybody out there in the world, we love you. We appreciate you for listening. Peace.